Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. Before my wife Emma and I bought our house, we rented an apartment from a complex that we discovered halfway through the rental process was a condo conversion. For those that don't know what this means, we didn't at the time either. This is a usually small apartment complex that instead of being owned by a single company and run by either an on-site manager or property management group, each unit in the complex is individually owned either by a person or company, and each owner chooses their own property management group or person, if they don't live in the unit, that is. In order for everyone to follow the same set of rules, they established an HOA that applies to all owners and/or tenants. We only learned about this when we were signing the lease agreement in June 2023 and were handed a badly photocopied stack of papers saying these were the covenants, conditions, and restrictions, CC&R, aka HOA rules and regulations, that we needed to follow. So we're just supposed to agree to all of this right now? I asked the property manager, Mr. Dawson. He shrugged. It's standard procedure, nothing unusual in there. Okay, thanks for throwing that at us at the last minute, I muttered. I'd rented before and wasn't horribly worried about it as I had always been a good tenant, so we moved in and sat down to try to read the CC&Rs we'd been handed in a little more detail. Most were pretty reasonable, a few were kinda silly, but a few of them were contradictory, nonsensical, or just plain didn't apply. Check this out, I said to Emma one night. There's a whole section about the playground that doesn't exist and never has as far as I can tell. Maybe they planned to build one but never did, she suggested. In any case, we moved in, got settled, got to know our neighbors, and then stuff started breaking in our apartment. No biggie, contact our property management group, let them know there's an issue. The interesting thing is, the CC&R they handed us was actually more restrictive on repair issues than state law, this is important, and attached daily fines to residents who didn't keep their property in good repair. Now, interestingly enough, they defined in good repair pretty broadly. This included the appliances they provided, the mechanical systems of the building, and the structure itself. This is when we learned that the unit we were in was apparently the problem child of the complex. The owner, Mr. Peterson, always tried to skimp on maintenance, was notoriously slow to repair things, and really hated spending money on his investment, so we contact the property manager this guy hired, and well, let's just say they were interesting. They sent out their handyman, Rick, to take a look at the issue. Our washing machine had died. He looks at it, goes, "Yep, it's dead," and leaves. That's it. So I call up the property management folks before he's even left the parking lot. Me. Your guy just left here after taking a glance at the washer, saying it's dead and walking out the door. Didn't say anything else to us. Property manager. Oh, it's not a big deal. We'll get a repairman out there in the next couple of days. Okay, just make sure you let us know when he's coming so we can be sure to be here. 5 days later. No repairman. Call them back up. Me. Hey, we still haven't seen the repairman or heard anything regarding when he's coming out. Property manager. Sorry, we haven't been able to contact the owner of your unit to get his authorization to send out a repairman. Me. Well, any idea when you might get someone out here? Trekking to the laundromat to do our laundry is getting a bit bothersome. Property manager. No clue, we have to contact the owner first per his instructions. Me. Okay, can you hold on a minute? Thumb, thumb, thumb. I'm looking at the CC&Rs you provided us, looking at the section that states that the units are to be kept in good repair, and where it includes the appliances. I'm looking specifically at the section that says, all repairs must be started within 24 hours, and the section that states that owners will be fined X amount per day for repairs that are not started in that time frame. Property manager. Let me call you right back. Me. Please do. At this point, we are approaching 5 days and probably rapidly approaching the replacement value of the washing machine in fines. Emma looked at me with wide eyes. Did you just threaten them with the HOA rules? Not threaten, I replied with a grin, just stating facts. Well, that was the start of the war. Anytime something broke, they'd send Rick the handyman and things would either go unrepaired or get broken worse by this knucklehead. And Everything was a fight with Mr. Peterson. He tried several times to cause problems for Emma and me. Everything from claiming we had caused the damage to the unit. How did we cause the upstairs neighbor to just happen to put a nail through the main toilet sewer stack, and therefore cause raw sewage to leak between the walls? To looking for issues to cost him money. At the end, that was becoming true. But only because he was such an ass about everything. Here's where our revenge begins. The CC&Rs stated that all repairs had to meet current applicable building codes. Now, normally some things get grandfathered in when you're dealing with older buildings like this, but hey, their CC&Rs are legally binding on all parties. Third sentence of the opening paragraph, if memory serves. Well, we had an issue with our windows. They wouldn't close unless you pushed on them from the outside. Old crank to close casement windows. Simple fix, just replace the crank, right? Except by this point I'd gotten thoroughly pissed off by Mr. Peterson and his shenanigans on different issues over the few months we'd been there. So I called up the property management company. They come out to replace the cranks on the windows. And then I point out the fact that the CC and Rs require repairs to be up to code, and those single-pane aluminum-framed windows are not up to code. "What exactly are you saying?" asked the repair guy. "I'm saying," I replied calmly, "that according to the CC and Rs, all repairs must be up to current building code. These windows aren't." "Yep, they got to replace all the old aluminum windows in our apartment with double-pane vinyl windows." "I can't believe that worked," Emma said when the crew showed up to install the new windows. "Just wait," I told her. "I'm just getting started." I waited until they had replaced the siding and repainted everything to match to point out that the windows in the bedrooms were not up to code. They did not open sufficiently wide to be considered egress windows per code. "Are you kidding me?" Mr. Dawson said over the phone. "We just replaced those windows." "Not my problem that you didn't check the egress requirements," I replied. "It's in the CC and Rs, and I've got the building code section right here." So they had to put us up in a hotel until they got that one fixed. They had to open up the wall on the inside and reframe the windows in both bedrooms to meet current code. I talked to the contractor one day. That one cost about $5,000 start to finish. "You know, I've never seen anyone use these rules like this," the contractor James told me. "Most tenants just put up with this stuff." "I'm not most tenants," I replied. The worst, though, was the mold issue. The way our unit was constructed, it was a quasi-basement unit, which meant they didn't have to install fire sprinklers since it was 2 floors and a basement instead of 3 floors. The bottom half of the bedroom walls was poured concrete, and those walls were always cold. The last winter we were there, around January 2025, we started to see mold develop on the walls due to the condensation and poor air movement in the closet, and that mold transferred over to some infrequently worn clothes and started growing like mad. Contacted the property management company. They sent Rick the handyman with a bottle of bleach and some rags. Their next suggestion was to hang some of the damp RID containers to try to absorb moisture. Then they slapped another coat of paint on the concrete wall as if that was going to do anything. "Rick, that's not going to solve the problem," I said as he wiped down the wall. "Look, it's what they told me to do," he replied with a shrug. "Take it up with management." That was the last straw in my book. I contacted a half-dozen agencies before finding out the right people to talk to. They sent over a representative to take samples and examine the construction of the apartment. We were then only allowed to get belongings while wearing a respirator, and they ordered the property owner to get us a hotel for the foreseeable future. Black mold, not just on the foundation wall, but also under the carpet in the closet. All our clothing had to be professionally cleaned, decontaminated. Fortunately, it had not spread to the rest of the wall structure, but was confined to one small section of concrete wall and floor. So the cleanup was actually relatively straightforward and only took about a week. "How bad is it?" I asked the inspector. "Bad enough that you two are lucky you didn't get seriously ill," she replied. "This is a major health hazard." The remediation, though, that was not so straightforward, as best as I could figure out. When they built this complex exterior waterproofing and insulation to prevent exactly this scenario, on below-grade walls wasn't quite as stringently required in the code. But remember the language in the CC and Rs about all repairs having to meet current applicable code? Whoops. They got to excavate all the way around the foundation wall, back to about 3 feet to give them room to properly work on the wall. They got to pressure wash the outside of the foundation wall, then apply the correct, expensive, waterproofing to the outside of the foundation wall. Then they got to install foam insulation blocks, also expensive, on the exterior of the walls a week or so later, after all the waterproofing cured. Now, while that last one wasn't Mr. Peterson's fault, if he hadn't been such an ass about the repairs and had been even the tiniest bit cooperative on repairs, I wouldn't have dug nearly as hard into making sure it was fixed right. And if the HOA's CC and Rs weren't so poorly written, he could have probably gotten away with a lot less. When I asked the contractor for a ballpark of how much something like this cost, his answer was more than $10,000. He wouldn't specify how much more. "Between you and me," James whispered, "it's closer to $15,000. But don't tell anyone I told you. For those keeping score, that's over $15,000 in repairs. We were in this unit for about 2.5 years. 2 years on a lease from June 2023 to June 2025. The remaining 6 months or so were month to month as we were wrapping up on buying our house. Our rent was $750 a month, and from what we could find online on the purchase price of the unit and when it was purchased, the mortgage for it was probably about $500 a month. Even without assuming other expenses like insurance, etc., that meant at most a profit of only $250 a month. That's only about $7,500 in profit for the whole time we were there. I almost feel bad for him, Emma said as we packed up to leave. Don't, I replied. If he'd just done the right thing from the beginning, none of this would have happened. So if you are a landlord, don't be an ass. It may cost you way more than you expect. The next one is an entitled people story. I need to tell you about the most satisfying moment I've had in my 20 years of running a marina. It involves an entitled boat owner, a ridiculous demand, and the sweetest malicious compliance I've ever executed. For context, I inherited this marina from my uncle about 15 years ago. It's a modest operation with about 40 slips, located on a pretty nice stretch of waterfront. Nothing fancy, but we keep things clean, well-maintained, and our rates are fair. Most of our customers are great people who just want a place to dock their boats and enjoy the water. We have a waiting list because people actually want to be here. I keep my own boat docked at the marina in Slip 37. It's a decent-sized fishing boat. Nothing extravagant, but it's my pride and joy. I built a lot of it myself over the years, and I use it regularly for both fishing trips and just getting out on the water to clear my head. The slip I chose is in a corner spot that's a bit out of the way, specifically so I wouldn't be taking up a prime location that a paying customer might want. About 6 months before this incident, a woman moved her yacht into Slip 35, just 2 spots down from mine. I'll call her Karen because, well, that's exactly what she was. From day one, she had complaints. The dock was too narrow for her liking, even though her boat fit fine and every other boat owner managed perfectly well. The water was too choppy, as if I controlled the ocean. Other boaters were too loud on weekend mornings, despite the fact that there's no noise ordinance on the water and people generally kept it reasonable. Karen had one of those luxury yachts that probably cost more than my entire marina. She made sure everyone knew it too. She'd strut around in designer sunglasses and expensive boating outfits that looked like they'd never seen actual work on a boat. Her yacht had some pretentious name that I can't even remember, but it was definitely the kind of name that screamed, "I have more money than sense." The thing about Karen was that she seemed to think paying for a slip meant she was buying partial ownership of the marina. She'd complain to my dock manager about other customers, demand we implement new rules that would benefit only her, and generally act like she was doing us a favor by being there. My staff started calling me whenever she showed up because they couldn't deal with her constant demands. She routinely violated our marina rules. We have clear regulations about noise after certain hours, proper disposal of waste, and keeping your slip area clean. Karen ignored all of them. Her parties on the yacht would go late into the night with music blaring. She'd leave trash on the dock. She even installed additional dock accessories without permission, which was explicitly against our lease agreement. Whenever my staff tried to address these issues, she'd either ignore them or threaten to take her business elsewhere. I usually let my manager handle customer relations, but I'd had to step in with her a few times. She never seemed to understand that we were actually being lenient with her because, frankly, she was more trouble than she was worth. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Despite docking at my marina for 6 months, Karen had never actually met me. She dealt with my dock manager and various staff members, but I'm usually doing maintenance work, handling paperwork in my office, or out on my own boat. I don't wear a uniform or walk around announcing I'm the owner. Most regular customers know me, but Karen had never bothered to learn who anyone was beyond my dock manager. One beautiful Saturday morning, I was working on my boat in my slip. I had the engine compartment open and was doing some routine maintenance, covered in grease and wearing my oldest work clothes. Karen came storming down the dock toward me, and I could tell from her expression that she was on a mission. She stopped at my boat and put her hands on her hips. She asked me how long I was going to have that eyesore sitting there. I was confused and looked around, wondering what she was talking about. She clarified that she meant my boat, which she called a piece of junk that was ruining the aesthetic of the marina. I was genuinely taken aback. My boat is well maintained, clean, and definitely not an eyesore. Sure, it's a working fishing boat and not a luxury yacht, but there was nothing wrong with it. I told her I wasn't planning on moving it anywhere since I used it regularly and it was in my assigned slip. That's when she really went off. She informed me that she'd been talking to other yacht owners and they all agreed that boats like mine shouldn't be allowed in a marina with luxury vessels. She said it brought down the whole neighborhood and made the marina look low class. She demanded I move my boat immediately to a different marina, or at least to the far end where it wouldn't be visible from her yacht. I'll admit, I was pretty angry at this point, but I also realized she had no idea who I was, and that gave me an opportunity. I asked her what authority she had to make demands about where boats were docked. She said that as a premium customer paying top dollar for her slip, she had every right to expect a certain standard. She added that if I didn't move my boat, she'd be filing a complaint with the marina owner and would make sure I got kicked out. This is where I could have just told her who I was and watched her backtrack, but where's the fun in that? Instead, I apologized and told her I'd definitely discuss the issue with the owner. She seemed satisfied with that response and walked away, probably thinking she'd intimidated some poor boat owner into submission. I went to my office and pulled out Karen's lease agreement. As I suspected, she'd been violating multiple terms. The late-night parties, the unauthorized dock modifications, the improper waste disposal, and several other infractions I'd documented over the months. We'd given her verbal warnings that she'd ignored, but I'd never pushed for formal consequences because I try to work with customers when possible. I also reviewed our slip assignments and rates. As I mentioned, I'd deliberately chosen slip 37 because it was out of the way, but there was another slip available that would technically accommodate her yacht. It was slip 12, which was in the oldest section of the marina, closest to the parking lot, with the most foot traffic, and right next to where we stored maintenance equipment. It was perfectly functional, but definitely not the premium waterfront location she currently enjoyed. Then I crafted my malicious compliance. I drafted an official letter on Marina letterhead as the owner. I explained that due to her recent concerns about slip assignments and her expressed dissatisfaction with the current arrangement, I was happy to accommodate her request for changes. However, I noted that her demands regarding other customers' boats were inappropriate, and I couldn't force any paying customer to relocate based on another customer's personal preferences. But here was the kicker. Since she'd raised questions about slip assignments and seemed very concerned about the positioning of boats at the marina, I was conducting a comprehensive review of all slip assignments to ensure optimal placement. As part of this review and given her expressed desire for changes, I was reassigning her to slip 12, effective immediately. I also addressed the lease violations. I noted that while conducting this review, I'd discovered multiple breaches of her lease agreement. I gave her the option to either comply with all marina rules going forward or terminate her lease with 30 days' notice. If she chose to stay, any future violations would result in immediate lease termination without refund. Additionally, I informed her that after reviewing current market rates, her monthly slip fee would be increasing. This was actually legitimate because she'd been grandfathered into an old rate, and new customers were paying more for similar slips. I was simply bringing her up to the current standard pricing. The letter concluded by explaining that her complaints about other customers and boats were noted, but that as the owner, I maintained sole discretion over slip assignments and marina policies. I made it clear that every boat at my marina met our standards, and any future complaints about other customers' vessels would not be entertained. I had the letter hand-delivered to her yacht that evening. Then I waited. The next morning, my phone started ringing early. Karen was absolutely furious. She couldn't believe she was being moved to what she called the worst slip in the marina. She accused me of retaliation and threatened legal action. I calmly explained that she'd requested changes to slip assignments, expressed strong feelings about boat placement, and I was simply accommodating her concerns by conducting a thorough review. When she complained about the rate increase, I pointed out that she'd been receiving a discounted rate that was no longer available to new customers, and it was only fair to standardize pricing. When she brought up potentially leaving, I reminded her that she could certainly terminate her lease with 30 days' notice as outlined in her agreement. She demanded to know which boat belonged to me. I told her it was the fishing boat in slip 37, the one she'd called an eyesore. The silence on the phone was absolutely golden. She realized she'd essentially complained about the marina owner's boat to the marina owner. She tried to backtrack, claiming she'd been having a bad day and didn't really mean those things, but I'd already made my decision. I told her the slip reassignment and rate increase were final, and she needed to move her yacht to slip 12 within 72 hours or she'd be charged a daily late fee. Karen tried a few more tactics. She claimed she'd sue for breach of contract, but her lease clearly stated that the marina reserved the right to reassign slips with reasonable notice for operational reasons. She threatened to leave bad reviews, and I told her that was her right but wouldn't change anything. She even tried to apologize and ask if we could just forget the whole thing happened, but I wasn't budging. She'd spent months being entitled, violating rules, and making my staff miserable. Then she'd tried to get me kicked out of my own marina because she didn't like my boat. She'd made her bed, and now she could lie in it. She eventually moved to slip 12, though she complained the entire time. The new slip was right in the high traffic area, so she constantly had people walking past her yacht. The maintenance equipment nearby meant she heard the sounds of work being done during the day. And her new neighbors in the surrounding slips were families with kids who used their boats constantly, creating exactly the kind of activity and noise she'd complained about before. The rate increase meant she was now paying about 30% more per month. She stuck it out for about 2 months before giving notice that she was leaving. On her way out, she tried one last time to complain about how unfairly she'd been treated. I simply reminded her that she'd gotten exactly what she asked for, a reassessment of boat placements and slip assignments. After she left, her slip was taken by a retired couple with a modest sailboat who were absolutely delightful. They actually thanked me for the opportunity to dock at the marina and have been model customers ever since. The best part? My boat is still sitting happily in slip 37, exactly where it's always been, and I learned a valuable lesson about identifying entitled customers early and not letting them get away with breaking rules just to avoid confrontation. Sometimes, malicious compliance is about giving people exactly what they ask for and letting them discover why it was a terrible idea. Karen demanded changes to boat placements and slip assignments, and that's precisely what she got, just not in the way she expected. The next one is a petty revenge story. I, 34F, have lived in a very nice part of conservative Oregon State for 5 years, and this is not an easy state to be accepted when you're a family of 4, M38, kids 10, M7F, from OC SoCal. It's like we have been transported to another planet. And shout out to parents, it's been awful dealing with the staring parents at the school bus stops. Oh my god. They stare at my style, hair, and tattoos like I'm an alien. I refuse to wear leggings, so it's like they take that as a personal insult. I've always avoided the lot of them and kept a polite distance, get my kids in bail. But there was one mom that was like the leader. I even heard her say once, yeah, I'm the neighborhood mom in case blah blah. She drove her husband's huge truck and thought she was the crap revving it up and down the street. Our apartment complex, all the families that wait at this stop live here, was within eyesight. It was so close I walked every day to teach my kids to not be lazy and to not be afraid of the weather. I always kept my distance, but what made my skin crawl is the woman couldn't park the truck. It was the first in-person school year since COVID and she was parking on the sidewalk directly in front of the corner that the bus pulled up to. I was the only parent that walked each day despite the weather. On one particular day, there was snow on the ground. She and one of the other creeper moms were sitting in the truck with the windows down, so I actually stopped and said, "Hey, do you mind not parking on the sidewalk? It's hard to get by." Completely calm, just a passing comment. She immediately responds with, "I drive a big truck. Deal with it." I was not expecting that reaction at all. Her friend was closest to me on the passenger side, frantically trying to roll up the windows, but at the last couple inches, I come out of shock and say, "Then learn how to drive it, then walk away." The next day, I walk up the sidewalk, and there she is in the rain, now blocking the sidewalk. I call the non-emergency police line, and they said they will keep an eye on the corner for afternoon drop-off. When the afternoon comes, there is a black Tesla sitting there with gray lettering that says police. Truck idiot pulls up on the sidewalk not seeing him. She's bumping 2000s techno and has kids jumping around. He walks over and talks to her and leaves. I then get a call from the officer to offer some comfort, I guess. He gave her a ticket for driving with kids not in their seatbelts and gave her a warning for parking on the sidewalk, forcing people to go around her into the street on the icy ground. He told me to call him again if she keeps doing it and to stay away from her. She's an angry person. I don't see her till the next week. Guess where she parks? I call the officer's direct hash he had given, and he comes within minutes pulling right along her truck. All the parents are staring. But I do notice that the friend that had been in the truck is now staring at me. I stared straight at the street ahead of me, praying for the bus to appear because I was trying not to laugh. I have always left these women alone, kept my distance. It's been a couple years now. One of their sons even went up to my son and told him, "Did you know your mom is a bad person?" I never did anything, never approached the parents. I ignored it and used it as a lesson for my son. Now I found out how far her new tickets have added up to. She racked up $800 in tickets. She hasn't gone to the bus stop since. I eventually figured out she does still live here. I haven't seen her at the bus stop since the second cop interactions. I see her driving around. Now she drives an ugly little gold Honda. I'm the last person that wants to duck with you, but if you won't stop, what can I do? Update the story of the truck. After the final ticket, she stopped showing up at the bus stop, but I eventually figured out that she still lives here because she drives by every day in the morning and in the afternoon because her kids still go to the same school and she's on the same schedule. I see her on the same driving schedule and she stares at me over her shoulder, but I don't know how she could know I had any effect on the situation. This year, 2025, I have seen her at school events with a new man, so I don't think the husband just took the truck away on timeout. I think the husband left her at some point and literally took the truck away with him. Keep in mind that I did not call anybody to report her driving with kids hanging out of her truck or in the back of the truck. I only called to see if they would keep an eye on the bus stops because in the bad weather, people were parked in the sidewalk. I didn't report her license plate or anybody specific, so the day that she rolled up with the kids all over the truck, the cop went up to her on his own, and she argued with the cops, yelling that she does this all the time. The kids weren't even hers. She was doing carpool. The reason she was at the bus stop was to pick up her kids that take the bus with my kids. The next one is a malicious compliance story. To understand what happened, you first need to understand two people, Susan and Jack. See, I used to work part-time at a burger joint that has a drive-thru, and I was often the one at the window. Susan was a regular customer, and everyone there had an opinion about her. She's very particular and has a tendency to snap at you if you don't do it right the first time without being asked. I was her favorite employee, though, because I would always take the time to chat with her if we weren't busy. She was actually quite pleasant once you got to know her, just a bit prickly. Now for Jack. He was the new GM brought in to fix the restaurant. Now, I don't think there was anything that needed fixing, but the owner disagreed. He was originally meant to be the assistant GM, but then the owner fired our old GM and Jack was put in charge. He was a piece of work, the kind of manager you don't want to have. My favorite Jack moment was when he pulled all the staff on shift into the back while we were still open to lecture us on not smiling enough. You know the type of manager. On to the story. Now, one thing we had to do in the drive-thru is put a numbered sticker on the car's side mirror. This sticker was used by the runners who took food out to identify the car, so it's very important. Susan, however, didn't like having the sticker on her mirror. She was convinced she would get in an accident if the mirror was covered even a little, and always insisted on having it put on the car door instead. This wasn't out of the ordinary. We put stickers on doors all the time when we couldn't reach the mirror. However, Jack decided he wasn't having it, and made a new rule that we could only put stickers on mirrors. I figured, okay, but if the customer asks for it, it should still be fine, right? Wrong. I got chewed out for putting the sticker on Susan's car door. I tried to explain to Jack why I did it, but he wouldn't listen. Eventually, he just huffed at me and said, "Look, you need to put the stickers on the mirror, not the door, no exceptions." Well, fine then. Cue malicious compliance. The next time Susan came in, I put the sticker on her mirror, as ordered. She was confused, as I always put it on her door without being asked, and snapped, "What are you doing? Don't put it there. I'll get into an accident." I explained to her the new rule, and that my hands were tied. I didn't want to get in trouble after all. Then, I told her that it was Jack's rule. I didn't get to witness the next part directly, unfortunately. However, I heard about it secondhand from my coworkers. Apparently, when one of the runners brought her food out, she stopped them and asked them to grab Jack. She then proceeded to give Jack the ass-chewing of a lifetime about his dumb rule. One particular quote that was relayed to me was, "What point is there to force them to put it there? They can see it just fine on the door." My thoughts exactly, Susan. Anyway, the rule was later amended that customers could request for the sticker to be placed on their door. Sorry it wasn't as dramatic as most posts on here, but I wanted to share my bit of compliance. The next one is an entitled people story. Several years ago, my sister heard a rumor about my brother and automatically went onto social media, shared personal details about him, and refused to let him come near her children going forward. This rumor turned out to be nothing to do with my brother. My sister continued to share false accusations about him and refused to listen to anyone. Her relationship with different family members disintegrated, and she sent a message to all family members threatening to disown them and not let them see her children unless they cut my brother off. I didn't agree to that, and neither did any other family, so she carried through with her threat and blocked everyone online and stopped attending family events. A few months of silence followed before being interrupted by an email sent to half the family. She accused everyone of upsetting her children because they didn't send them any presents or Christmas money for Christmas. The explanation was that we would have, but the last time someone had contacted her, she had sent them a reply full of insults and threatened to file a police report if anyone contacted her. This continued to the next birthday for one of her children, where, again, she messaged family saying that she thought we would have learned our lesson from Christmas. She followed this up by expecting my parents to kick my brother and I out of the house for a week so her and her children could stay with them whilst they were in between moving homes, despite not having talked to my parents for months. This was shot down, but not without social media posts about family ignoring family, and started accusing us of disowning her instead and that we hated her kids. We still don't talk, and whilst I miss my nieces and nephews, I don't miss my sister's entitlement. Anyway, thank you for watching.